Say what you want about Israel, but their wall works. And they sure know a lot more about how to deal with Islamic violence than the progressive weenies in Europe. Let's explore. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Freedom Alternative. Unless you've been living under a rock, you probably know by now that the liberal gun-controlled Paris was once again the target of jihadis going full Muslim and shooting at several hundreds of people in 7 different locations of the French capital. At the time of this recording, a total number of 132 people are dead and 250 more are in the hospital, some of them in critical condition. To the surprise of exactly nobody with 2 brain cells to rub together, at least one of the attackers is a poor little oppressed refugee who was entering Greece last month and was walking through Serbia complaining that Orban is an oppressor for putting up a wall. 2 others were from a Belgian banlieue, which is the main product of multiculturalism both in France and in Belgium. Also, much to the surprise of exactly nobody who knows a thing or two about France, at least some of the attackers were already under the surveillance of the French services but could not be taken off the streets before this atrocity has taken place because of the unshakable dogma that human rights extend to jihadis, and also to the fact that the French services are overwhelmed and understaffed. Why? Because there's just too many potential jihadis in France to keep track of all of them. And more are to come. Now, I could go on in a rant on why this has happened and the ideological underpinnings that led to this and the previous atrocities that occurred in Paris this year alone, not to mention other previous ones, but I won't. In moments like these, it is perhaps better to look at what can be done from now on. Yes, bombing the Islamic State is fine and dandy, but it's not even remotely enough, and everyone knows it. If that would have been enough, the combined military efforts of virtually everyone would have yielded better results by now, don't you think? Until there is a broad realization that the civilized world is not fighting a war with another civilized enemy with whom it has a disagreement, there can be no real progress. Unlike other long-time wars, in this one the adversary is willing to burn the planet down amidst it's the last thing they do. And Israel is one of the countries that has actually understood this full well after living in a very dangerous neighborhood and having that pesky desire to survive, which always seems to bother the right kind of people, so I thought I'd say it again. But putting that aside for a moment, there needs to be another painful realization. Namely that some countries of Europe, France and Germany in particular, are being led by traitors and cocks and not by leaders who have the best interests of Germans and Frenchmen at heart. You can call me an extremist all you like, but who is the extremist? Is it Viktor Orban, who understood damn well from the first second that this refugee crisis is bound to bring sectarian and barbaric conflicts in the heart of Europe? Or is it people like the German defense minister, Ursula von der Leyen, who just yesterday was explaining to us that there are no terrorists amongst the refugees? For as long as these kinds of schmucks are the leaders of the civilized world, expect more such attacks, not less. For as long as the French state is busy prosecuting Marine Le Pen for comments made 4 years ago, instead of, actually protecting the French citizens from actual harm, expect more such attacks, not less. Speaking of Marine Le Pen, her party is a Kremlin-funded scheme. The political establishment in France should be utterly ashamed of itself that the only one willing to talk some sense on this issue is a Putinist shill. The trade-offs to address this are known and available to anyone willing to think for a little bit. There are tested methods out there to offset the threat, but the methods come from 2 countries unpopular with the European elites, namely Israel and Australia. Now, we can't actually build walls around Europe like Israel did because the sheer size of Europe's maritime borders is quite a put-off. And unless Spain, Greece and Italy are willing to shut down their tourist revenue from their beaches, such a plan is not really a way forward. So for external protection, we can take lessons from Australia. You know, offshore centers, strengthened coast guard, and yes, a will to turn the boats around and issue bans for those entering illegally. It worked for Australia. All the boats stopped and lives have been saved because nobody now dies trying to cross into Australia anymore. For internal protection, on the other hand, we can and should take lessons from Israel. For instance, there are no TSAs in Israeli airports, yet exactly 0 planes going towards or leaving from Israeli airports have been hijacked in the last 40 years. Looking for terrorism in Israeli airports, we have to go all the way back to 1972 for the Lod Airport massacre, but even that one was on the ground. The agents of Shin Bet, or the Israeli Security Agency, are largely unseen, and a non-jihadi resident of Israel has a virtually 100% chance of living his entire life without even knowing that Shin Bet exists. In fact, their motto is the unseen shield. You know, this has already been tested in my country. For instance, nobody sees here the Jihad Prevention Squad unless one knows where to look for, but from time to time, the press puts in headlines like this one, or like this one. And of course, after a while, the European Union whines that we are racists, but they can whine as much as they please, for all I care. The collaboration between the services of my country and the services in Israel is publicly acknowledged and documented on the institution's website, much to the desperation of knuckleheads pretending not to be anti-Semites. So yeah, say what you want about the inhumane methods of Australia and the Israeli tactics of homeland security, but they work, as opposed to putting French flags on the social media profiles. And not only do they work, but they work without curbing the freedom for the rest of us, which is something that cannot actually be said about the tactics employed in the United States or Germany, where people's privacy and liberty has totally went out of the window. But I'll say more about Germany towards the end of this week when I'll finish that long video that I've kept on promising about France and Germany. It's gonna be a long one, over 30 minutes long. Oh, and since I said nice things about Israel, I know that's bound to bring me new friends, so I might as well piss off everyone and make a video about the Jewish lobby as well. So stay tuned. The next one is going to be about the Jewish lobby. See you around at Freedom Alternative.